Now, obviously if our digestive fire isn't working very well, this isn't great because we don't digest our food very well. And therefore, from this central digestive fire, there's not enough good stuff, taken from the food that we eat. There's not enough worthwhile deep transformation taking place so that stuff's formed that's going to be useful for the body to nourish all of these tissues, and to go on and nourish ojas. So we want our digestion to be working well. One, so we don't experience all these unpleasant sensations of poor digestion, but also so that there's enough worthwhile stuff extracted from our food, absorbed and assimilated by the tissues, and metabolized by those tissue fibers. The other reason that digestion is so important is because if we're not digesting food properly, it doesn't just get passed out at the other end and everything's fine. There is a waste produced, just in the same way as when we burn fuel on a fire, there's ash produced. There's always a little bit of waste produced as a product of digestion. And the same thing happens in our gut, the same thing happens at every single level of tissue metabolism, the same thing happens in the liver. There is a natural amount of waste produced that the body needs to eliminate. Now what happens is when our digestion isn't working very well, when it's too dull or when it's up and down or even when it's too strong, there's an excess of waste produced. There's too much waste produced that our body has difficulty eliminating, and that accumulates. Now in the gut, when that waste forms, it has different forms depending on the state of our digestive fire, but basically it's like old, heavy, sticky, often acidic mucus. Over-fermented, yucky, sticky mucus. Doesn't sound that great, does it? And it's not like regular mucus, like it's a little bit thick and a little bit stringy. It's really thick and stringy and tacky. It's stick-to-the-wall kind of mucus. It's really gross. And it's often discoloured as well. It's got a yellowy or a greeny or a brownish kind of stain to it. It's good to be graphic about these things. This waste in Ayurveda is called ama. Ama basically literally means undigested waste. But the word that's most commonly used these days is just toxins. Ama is toxins. Now, first of all, this ama accumulates in the gut as plugs, like gobs of sticky mucus. Accumulates in the intestines, in the duodenum, in the small intestine, all the way down into the bowel. And how do you think that makes us feel? Not great, Heavy, sluggish. It makes our digestion feel dull and heavy as well, And so when this ama is produced, even if the ama is produced as a result of our digestive fire being too sharp and too strong, or being erratic and up and down and all over the place, this ama that's produced further impedes the digestive process, because all those holes where all the digestive secretions are coming through, like the little sphincter that carries all the slurry of enzymes from the pancreas and the gallbladder, bile from the gallbladder, that little sphincter is very, very small. It's not huge. All of the little holes that are secreting hydrochloric acid in the stomach are even smaller again. So when there's this lining of gooey stuff that's built up, this ama, this waste, things can't be secreted properly. All the holes are blocked up. So our digestion is compromised even more. As well as that, as the ama moves down in our digestive tract into the lower parts of our small intestine and into the bowel, absorption is blocked. Again, those holes that absorption happens through, those little tiny channels where stuff can permeate across the mucous membranes of the gut, this is going to be blocked up. So we end up with malabsorption. We end up with poor digestion. As it goes on and the ama accumulates, we end up with malabsorption. Because, and especially if this ama is fermented, so it has these acidic, fermented sort of qualities, then the presence of that ama is also going to cause inflammation. And what happens with inflammation is that the integrity of the gut wall becomes compromised, and larger molecules can pass across the gut wall that aren't supposed to. And in modern fields of nutrition, this is being called leaky gut. Has anyone heard of leaky gut syndrome? So this leaky gut syndrome is simply caused because the digestion isn't working very well, armour gets formed, and the integrity of the gut starts to suffer. Now, given various factors, and these can be things like excessive stress, doing too much exercise when we're feeling heavy and lethargic and there's armour present, or when we've got a cold or a fever, or when we're sick in any way, then this armour gets pushed deeper, from the gut, deeper into the tissues and into the channels of circulation that are supplying all of these tissues with nutrient and nourishment. So the armour moves into circulation and it blocks up all of the channels that are trying to circulate nutrition, trying to circulate hormones, trying to circulate all of the bits and pieces that our body needs to work well, and it blocks them up, and so those things can't get to where they're supposed to be. This armour also starts to affect these little metabolic tissue fibres and extinguish those, or at least cause them to be dull and not function as well as they should. So the tissues don't get metabolised properly, more immature tissue is formed, an excess of immature tissue is formed, and the tissues themselves in terms of their functioning become compromised, heavy, sluggish. And they form excess waste and they become susceptible to disease. And again, at the end result, because everything's blocked up, OJAS isn't being formed properly. And so this substance that is upholding our immune system and the integrity of all of our tissues, the entire organism, is compromised, is weakened. And what this is the basic model of pathology in Ayurveda. For any kind of pathology, whether it is a common cold or a fever, whether it's anemia, whether it is obesity or diabetes, whether it's osteoporosis or arthritis, whether it is Alzheimer's or multiple sclerosis or infertility, or chronic fatigue syndrome or cancer. Any of these things, this is the beginning stages of those pathologies. If our Agni is not working properly, then the ball is rolling when it comes to setting up the process of disease in our bodies.